Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back, one and all, to another episode of Easy XP, your one-stop shop for gaming news, info, discussion, and other gaming goodness. I am your host, Den, as always, and thank you very much once again to What the Folk for the previous article of entertainment. If you are a fan of folk who also happens to be a fan of video games, I'm not sure of the overlap between the two demographics, but I can only dream, then stick around, because we have video games in the plenty. We're going to be going through our normal format today, so that means we're going to be going through some news, and we're going to be going through what's been happening in my world of gaming this week, and finish off with the discussion topic for the week. And so, with that in mind, let's get straight underway with the news. And now, unless you've been living under a particularly virile rock for the past, couple of days, you will know that Apple has just announced the iPhone 6. Yesterday, Apple announced the latest version of their latest flagship device, the iPhone. The iPhone, creatively titled the iPhone 6, comes with a larger 4.7-inch screen, iOS 8, which includes an integrated fitness tracker, as well as NFC compatibility, which is integrated into Apple's new Apple Pay system, which uses near-field communication to take the place of a traditional credit card. There's also a much larger iPhone 6 Plus that features a 5.5-inch screen. Both phones released on the 19th of September. Now, I want you to find the nearest container of mildly ingestible liquid and begin drinking it, because it will make this next bit a hell of a lot funnier. The iPhone 6 will start at $869 and will go up to $1,129, while the Plus model will range from $1,000 to $1,249. Yeah, just a little bit of a pretty penny for those ones. Apple also announced their first step into the wearable technology market with the Apple Watch, which will act to display notifications and control the iPhone in your pocket. There's lots more of subtle differences to the new device that I encourage you to see for yourself if you're interested in acquiring the device. That would take far much time than I have today to cover. So now you might be asking yourself, why are you covering iPhone news on a predominantly gaming radio show? Well, like it or not, the iPhone has had a very distinct market on the mobile gaming market, and so obviously the iPhone is something that we should be covering as a matter of posterity, if nothing else. And Apple claims that the new iPhones have 50% greater graphics performance for their games, and so it'll be interesting to see how that's integrated into the next cow clicker Farmville-esque extraordinaire with ultra-high polygons this time. But who knows, we might see some cool stuff comes out of it. It's a very expensive thing for something that's not too different from the iPhone 5S. It's a hell of an expensive device. And so, I'm not in the market for a phone at the moment, but for those of you who are and are looking for the upgrade, I'm sure you'll find quite a bit to like in the device, even if it is just the latest version. I do find the new walletless pay system to be quite interesting, although I'm not entirely sure how well integrated it is in Australia at this point, but it'll be interesting to see if it becomes integrated simply because of the fact that Apple has chosen to integrate it. But we'll certainly see, won't we, as it goes along. And so that's a bit of obligatory tech news for the day. Now on to some more gaming-related news. Core gamer demographic is mostly male, according to NPD Group. The NPD Group, who are described as a global information provider, recently undertook a survey of PC gamers that revealed that core PC gamers are predominantly male. The survey split the PC gaming demographic into three distinct parts: heavy core, who play core games for more than 5 hours a week; light core, who play less than 5; and casual, who predominantly play casual games, obviously. The results show that while PC gamers in general are split 51 to 49% male to female, the core demographic were comprised mainly of men, while the casual demographic was overwhelmingly female. Their words, not mine. Okay, just put down the pitchfork, please. Put down the torches. Please don't come and mob me. This is just raw statistical information that we've been given. Now, I will say that while these facts are interesting, they're not entirely surprising, in my view. there is a reason why video games are, in fact, marketed to a predominantly young male demographic. And while it kind of sucks, it's there. What I find frustrating about these results is how limited they are. For instance, I'd like to see how the results change if you include console games in there, or how does this change over time? Like, has the percentage of female PC gamers been increasing as opposed to other years? And exactly what percentage are? Because they, as hard as I might to look on their site to find these percentages, all I could find was comprised mainly and overwhelmingly. So I couldn't find concrete percentages. So does that mean that it's a 70%, 30% split, or a 60-40, or a 90-10? We don't know. They're very confusing. But also at the same time, not exactly surprising results. Into what might be considered one of the most interesting stories of this week: Minecraft developer to be potentially bought by Microsoft. The Wall Street Journal published an article that suggests Microsoft are about to acquire Minecraft developer Mojang for $2 billion. The report suggests that Marcus Notch Pearson, the creator of Minecraft and founder of Mojang, would unlikely to stay with the company should the acquisition go through. As of yet, both parties are refusing to comment on the matter. It's certainly a big year of acquisitions, isn't it, with Oculus and Facebook. And certainly this is a very interesting development if it ends up going through, because I wouldn't have thought that Mojang would be the kind of developer that is sincerely hurting for cash or particularly needs the kind of money. So it's certainly a hefty investment, $2 billion for Minecraft. But of course, owning Mojang would certainly give Microsoft all the rights to the Minecraft title. And so I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. Because it's Microsoft, I'm sure that Minecraft will still be mostly PC-centric going on into the future if this acquisition does go through, theoretically. This might cause some potential problems for owners of Minecraft for the PlayStation 4, because obviously Microsoft would not have much incentive to do much to help their competitor, and so we'd probably see the Xbox One version of Minecraft become disproportionately better than the PlayStation 4 version, should this deal hypothetically go through. This also gives Microsoft the right to Minecraft as a brand. Minecraft as a brand has such hefty power, and if you started associating Minecraft with the Xbox One, then it would certainly be a nice little push for the Xbox One, I feel, especially with the much younger demographic that's drawn to Minecraft in the first place. One potential aspect that I saw somebody bring up was also the possibility of Microsoft either developing or working on some iteration of Minecraft 2, which they would be well within their rights to do if they decided to go forth with the acquisition. Now, obviously, this is still very early days. Even if these reports are true, which they're still very capital R rumor at this point, even if they're true, we don't know at what stage they're at, or how final it is, or whether it even will go ahead, but I will keep you informed on this topic as it progresses. And now we're going to end off our section of the news with the short story roundup. Smash 3DS won't support the Circle Pad Pro, but will support the C-Stick. A little bit of gaming controversy in the form of Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS. For those of you who were listening last week, know that Nintendo have recently announced the new 3DS, which includes a small C-Stick, which acts as a second thumbstick. Now, Nintendo have announced that Super Smash for the 3DS will not be supporting the Circle Pad Pro, but will be supporting this new C-Stick. A lot of people have been complaining about this, but me personally, I don't see the issue, because people have been putting forward the fact that the C-Stick is used for lots of high-play competitive maneuvers in Super Smash Bros., and I can certainly see why it would be a shame to not have the C-Stick, but honestly, guys, I own the Circle Pad Pro. You are not playing Smash Bros. With that thing attached to your 3DS. I mean, really. the only way you're using the Circle Pad Pro is in something that requires both of the sticks for camera controls. You are simply not using the buttons you're not using the face buttons as your main source of input with the Circle Pad attached. It's, from a practicality standpoint, it's just not happening. Like, obviously it would have been nice if they supported it, but I'm not personally seeing the huge issue with this. Obviously it's a little bit of an annoyance for people who want to do some of the high level plays on the 3DS version, but honestly I have a feeling that people who would be wanting to do high level plays in Super Smash Bros. Will be going for the Wii U version anyway. So yeah, obviously in two minds, obviously it's a bit of a consumer standpoint thing that obviously would have been nice if they supported the Circle Pad Pro, but practically there's probably not that much of a reason not to. Like, I'm fairly sure this wouldn't have been an issue at all if they hadn't mentioned it. Like, if they just, when the game was released, said, oh, C-Stick support, then people would have gone, okay, sure. But since they've specifically said, no, it won't support the Circle Pad Pro, they're making kind of a bigger deal out of it than necessarily needs to be. And along that vein, that's the last I'll do of that. Moving on. The tech specs of the NVIDIA GTX 900 series graphics cards have potentially been leaked. The leaks, depending on who you ask, put the new highest range card, the 980, either just above or just below the current market leader for single card GPUs, the 780 Ti. No real-world in-game benchmarks have at this point been leaked, so we don't know the actual in-game performance of these new cards. So for those of you who are in the market for a new graphics card, might be interested in maybe potentially holding off to see where NVIDIA go with this new 900 series. Of course, these are leaks and rumors with a capital R, so take them all with a pinch of salt. Watch Dogs for Wii U will release on November 18th. Yes, I'm as surprised as you are. The Ubisoft are actually going to be going through with their promise to bring Watch Dogs to the Wii U, which I'm all for, obviously, but the only problem I have with this is the way Ubisoft are going to treat it, because it's not going to sell well. Of course it's not going to really sell well. It's almost however many 6 months after Watch Dogs has been released, and you know it's not going to be a terribly good version. Who exactly are they expecting to buy this at this point? Like obviously I'm super glad that they're bringing it out, but it just annoys me that I can guarantee, I am calling this right now, that when Watch Dogs for Wii U is released, it'll sell below expectations, and Ubisoft will come out and say, this is why we don't make core games for the Wii U, when in reality, the reason it didn't sell well is because there isn't an audience for it, because the people who wanted Watch Dogs have already bought Watch Dogs. It's just kind of silly. But obviously, I am very glad that they're still bringing it to it. I might even, if I have a bit of spare change, I might even pick it up just to show support. And wouldn't it just be a great irony if it ends up that after all this time, the Wii U version of Watch Dogs end up being one of the best running versions of it? Just like a complete slap in the face to convention and just something to show from the extra couple of months of optimization. But in terms of the port itself, I don't have a huge amount of hope. Ubisoft have been sort of a mixed bag when it comes to Wii U ports. From what I understand, Assassin's Creed 3 wasn't terribly good, but Assassin's Creed 4 was alright. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, it's kind of cool that it's come. Of the ports, I think that the standard we should be expecting is, theoretically, all other things being equal, it should be better than the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions, because the Wii U is a more powerful machine. Just like on a technicality, that's what should be what happens, but I'm not holding out a huge amount of hope. Moving on. The Destiny launch was one of the most successful franchise launches of all time, with $500 million worth of units being shipped. Certainly, congratulations to Bungie and the team at Destiny for doing that. Certainly a very high-profile new franchise release. Destiny, of course, being for both current and previous-gen consoles, so you can pick that up on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, 360, or PlayStation 3. And finally, Xbox One launch figures in Japan are quite bad. The console shipped just over 20,000 units in its first week. And in comparison, both the Wii U and the PlayStation 4 sold over 300,000 units in the same period of time. And those were considered marginally low-selling opening weeks for systems. Yeah. I don't think we should take anything away from this in terms of the Xbox One, because Microsoft and Xbox have never been a very predominant force in Japan, and so I don't think this is really indicative of anything of the console, but I think it's very telling of Microsoft's potential audience and market in Japan. And it's actually quite surprising. I actually think that 20,000 units, like the photos that you got saw passing around of the launch, where basically nobody was standing outside, with nobody, it was just like deserted at these launches. 20,000 units is certainly a figure. And yeah, I don't think it's indicative of the Xbox One or anything, but it's certainly an interesting statistic anyway. And so with that, we will be moving into our first track of the week. And so I said last week that I was going to be bringing you a couple of tracks from OC Remix's latest album, which is a tribute to the original Game Boy, which very recently saw its 25th year anniversary. And so as such, OC Remix have put forward a smaller album of tracks made specifically for the Game Boy's anniversary, and so I'll be bringing you a few from that. And so the first track I'll be bringing you is from a remixer called Chernobouge, and it is Taken, which is based on several tracks from Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy. I've been listening to this album all week. I could say it's certainly worth a pickup. If you are interested, you can, as always, pick it up from ocremix.com. And this is Taken from Donkey Kong for the Game Boy Advance. I hope you enjoy. You are listening to Easy XP on SURG FM, and that track was taken from OC Remix's 25th year legacy album for the Game Boy. And you know me, I am a sucker for a good old orchestral soundtrack, and that sounds like it could have come straight out of a Donkey Kong game itself. And so, moving on into our next portion of the show, where I ramble about what's been happening in my week of gaming. So what have I been playing this week? Well, not Destiny, for one. Destiny's been really, really, really interesting to me, but unfortunately, as a poor university student, I have not been able to acquire neither the game nor the hardware required to run said game. But I've been looking at some gameplay videos, and yeah, it looks interesting. It certainly does. It sort of looks like a cross between Borderlands and Firefall. I was talking about Firefall a week or two ago, and from what I can gather, it's a bit more traditional MMO-y than Borderlands, but also a bit more shooter than Firefall. Yeah, and I'll be certain to pick that one up when it moves its way onto the PC. Yeah, it's actually surprising that I haven't heard anything about server problems, considering it's a massively multiplayer online game. That's quite an achievement. It's one of the first proper AAA big budget launch games that hasn't had this problem in a while. You hear so much about the SimCity problem and Diablo 3, but no problems for Destiny. It's all been working just fine, from what I can gather. So kudos to them for that, and it's certainly a nice change to see somebody actually prepared for the kind of influx that they are expecting from the game. And watching the Destiny videos, I actually noticed something. And I think it actually helped me to narrow down my understanding of how a next-gen game should act. Like, for me, I've never been the kind of person who really believes in the kind of next-gen thing, because on the one hand, I'm a PC gamer, which doesn't run in generations. On the other hand, I'm a Nintendo gamer, which doesn't work in graphics. So the whole concept of a next-gen looking game has sort of gone over my head. But looking at some of the Destiny videos, I think I might have been able to start sort of like narrow down some of the appeal. And for me, I figured out that next-gen isn't so much about how a game looks. Next-gen is how the game moves. And I think that the current generation is going to be creating games that flow really well, rather than just games that look nice. Because we've been able to do games that look nice for ages. But going into it, it's games that are going to move nicer. Because in Destiny, some of the stuff that I was seeing is like cloth simulations on certain bits of clothing that moved, and everything felt really dynamic and smooth, and the animations felt more than just a sort of looped thing going over and over again. They sort of felt like they were in the world, and compare that with some dynamic shadows that moved as you walk, and some nice lens flares, and some nice ambient occlusion effects that make everything seem very smooth and rounded. And I think that's what people think about. That's the kind of look that people think about when they think about a next-gen game. And it also confirms one of the things that I've been wondering, because looking at screenshots, I've never been able to identify a next-gen game, but seeing it in motion is what's been setting it apart. And so, at this point in time, I think the importance of gameplay footage and trailers is going to become incredibly important in the future, because this kind of next-gen look that we've got going on depends very much on motion as much as it does on just shiny. And so, going into the future, gameplay is going to become much more important in determining the actual look of a game and how it feels. And that's certainly something interesting that I've noticed about Destiny, and also as a whole next generation thing as a whole. It's also something I noticed in Batman Dark Knight? Arkham Knight? One of those two. But yeah, everything moves and flows really well, and everything's dynamic, and I know these are kind of like fluffy ways to kind of try and describe it, but when you're dealing with next generation, it is a kind of fluffy thing, really. And so, off of what I haven't been playing, moving on to what I have been playing, I had an assignment this week, so naturally I delved back into Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is so strange. It sort of reminds me of Dark Souls, except not quite as unfair in the killing you department. Monster Hunter, I've never played anything quite like Monster Hunter, and I got the Wii U version of Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate a while back but I never ended up playing it. Well, I say I never ended up playing it. I put a great deal, many hours into the thing, and then I just stopped. I don't know why, because I jumped back into it in a seamless act of procrastination, and I really, really was enjoying myself again. And that kind of game, I have done pittance in it. I only am just starting out, and I have sunk 8 hours into it. It's the kind of game that you can sink hundreds upon hundreds of hours into. And I'm not even past the first major conflict of the game yet. I'm only at the 3rd level of hunts. And 8 hours. And it's not like some games like... I was playing Max Payne 3 a while back. And for me, Max Payne 3, you felt like you were putting tons of time into it, but in the end you're only getting like an hour of a session out of it. Like, is that it? I feel like I've been playing for ages. But with Monster Hunter, the hours just slip away, because you go on these massive, like, up to 50-minute hunts, and just the sheer enormity of taking down this monster that moves and feels like it's intelligent, is actively trying to go at you, and is moving around like it knows what it's doing, and it's just trying to take down this massive monster that's so much bigger than you and so much more powerful, and just slowly getting away at it. It's a massive thrill and a massive bit of appeal, and I'm hoping to find some friends to play it with, because I've been told that Monster Hunter gets innumerably better when you play it multiplayer. I might say that some gorgeous little environments and areas in that game. Like, it's a port of a Wii game, and it was also ported to the 3DS, so you're not expecting much, but like running in 1080p at 60 frames per second, you got some really, really nice effects. And also, all the monsters have been updated with the Wii U version, and they're very, very gorgeous looking things. And one thing I've noticed is that the monsters, just the way they move, they're all separately. There's so much love and dedication and effort put into the way every single monster in that game moves. And there are tons of monsters, like the way the way their attacks will start getting more sluggish as you wear them down, and how they'll start limping to the next areas as you're starting to hurt them. It's certainly a very, very interesting game, and I'm hoping to play some more of that. Actually, another thing that I've noticed, very, very playable on the gamepad. Like, just, because the way I've got it at home is I've got my Wii U plugged into one of my computer monitors, so if I'm ever in the mood, I can just pick it up, switch over the input. But sometimes you don't even need to do that. You just pick up the gamepad, switch it on, and start playing it. And it's a game that's very playable on the gamepad itself. Doesn't quite capture the spectacle of it, nor the true 1080p glory that you get on the full monitor, but it's certainly serviceable enough, and it works very well. And just being able to play a full console experience, as I've said before, in bed or on the can or just walking about the house is a wonderful thing to do. And so what else have I been playing this week? I did promise, and I can get back to you on how my new Surface does in terms of gaming. Look, it's all right. It's not a gaming centered machine, but the kind of stuff you'll be wanting to play on it, it'll mostly be able to handle. So more simple stuff like some Civ stuff, which actually has wonderful touchscreen support, I might add. That all works very fine. As a general rule of thumb, if it's 2D or it was made more than about 5 years ago, you're going to be fine. I tried running some Minecraft on it, got a decent 30 frames out of it. Of course, Minecraft isn't a very good test of its ability, because, as you should all probably know by now, just because Minecraft doesn't look like it should take up much resources, it does. Minecraft is a very resource-heavy game, no matter what it looks like. And so I tried that. Not the best experience, but it worked. It worked. It ran. And I might try running some modded Minecraft on it to see if I can while away some waits between lectures. I also got back into a game that I was playing quite a bit of a while ago, but I stopped playing for a multitude of reasons. And that is Dungeons of Dreadmore, which is quite an old game now. It's a true roguelike game. Like, the word roguelike is thrown around quite a bit nowadays. Like, you get it to apply to games like FTL and what have you. But no, Dungeons of Dreadmore is what roguelike is meant to be. Like a dungeon-crawling, randomly generated RPG that is not afraid at all to kill you mercilessly again and again and again. And because that's all turn and grid based, it works very well on the Surface, runs very well. And yeah, so those are the kind of things I have been playing on my Surface. And yeah, I am perfectly happy with how the Surface performs for gaming. I wasn't going to be using it as a main gaming device anyway, so the fact that it can run most of the smaller indie kind of games is very nice. I will say though that it does get quite hot when you're running anything intensive on it. I think in order to try and sleek down the design, Microsoft had to make a couple of sacrifices in terms of airflow. So it does heat up quite a bit when you're doing gaming, and of course you can't expect the battery to hold up for all that long when you're playing on it. And so that is what has been happening in my week of gaming. And with that, I think it's time to move on to our second track for the week. And this one, like our previous one, also comes from OC Remix's Legacy Game Boy 25th Anniversary soundtrack. And this one, look, what would an exploration of the Game Boy's merits be without a track from the infamous Tetris? And so this one, quite topically, is called Cry Me a River, which is based on the Tetris Type A theme by a user called Sir Nuts. Yes, Sir Nuts. Oh, how I love being in this community with such glorious pseudonyms to their name. And of course, this one can be picked up on ozremix.org for free as part of the Legacy album, which I highly recommend to anybody if you enjoy what you are hearing today. And so this one's a much more of an electronica kind of one, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But of course, I felt the need to throw it on here anyway because, hey, it's Tetris from a Game Boy soundtrack. So I hope you enjoy Cry Me a River. You are listening to Easy XP on SURG FM. My name is Den, your host as always, and that was Crimea River, based on... You heard it, you know what it's based on. Hopefully I don't need to go into too much detail about that one. But moving into our final section of the week, we're moving on to our discussion topic, and thankfully, what with all the whole controversy stuff starting to simmer down at the moment, we've had a nice lull, shall we say. And so I think I'll take this opportunity to talk about something that has been on my mind for quite a bit. It's certainly something that came up when I was doing some playing of Dark Souls over the past couple of weeks, and also when I was reading reviews and looking at gameplay videos of Destiny. And that is that gaming is unique, and it's an inherently interactive medium. And so we have the potential for a game to feel good. And I'm sure all of you who have played games out there know that sometimes you just get into a game and it just feels right. It just feels good. The attacks feel good. The motion feels good. But what exactly does that mean? What exactly does it mean for a game to feel good? What makes a game play well? And it's certainly a very interesting topic. I know for a fact that some of the games that I went into that I know that just felt good, and you'll hear a lot of terms around like weighty and impact and what have you, but I'm going to try and over the next 10 minutes or so, try and narrow some of this stuff down, try and pull it together and try and really dissect what is behind those terms. Now, for me, some of the games that I really felt have felt good, one game that particularly, or one series that comes particularly into mind is the Arkham series and the way it does combat. Just the first time you move around as Batman and use all the tools and in the combat, this feels good. I feel like I am Batman when you play those games. and it's quite, and it's certainly down to the combat system. Now, what makes that combat system feel good? And there's certainly a lot of ways to come about it. And with the Arkham series, the combat is very down to this concept of weight. Now, how do you express weight in an entirely visual medium? Well, the way they do it is that every time you hit somebody, the sound is big and bass heavy, and there's a tiny fraction of a pause for the screen, and the enemy reacts to the sound, reacts to the fact that they're being hit. Not to mention that the attack also takes time. These things all combine to create this sense of weight. And that's how Dark Souls does it as well. In Dark Souls, when you hit the button, your character is going to take about 3 seconds to execute that attack. And the entire thing is animated from start to finish, and it all has this very distinct, low, impactful sound. And when you do eventually hit something, sparks are created, there's an impact sound, there's the enemy reacts to being hit. They'll stagger or they'll move back. And to this extent, this is why all of the From Software games have 60 frames per second in From Software games hasn't been as necessary as it might be in other games. It still feels good, but in these From Software games, because everything you and your enemy does is so methodical and slow, having the extra response time isn't really going to help you that much. Because when it comes down to it, when your attacks take 3 seconds, having the extra 1/30th of a second the extra frames provide isn't going to be helping you that much. And so that certainly is one essential. No, it's not filmic as some people try to claim. No, it's just that they can get away with it because their combat system is so methodical. So how do you apply this to shooters? Well, in shooters, how you make a gun feel impactful is the sound it makes, the effect it has on the enemy, and the recoil you get, the response you get from it. So there's one game in particular that was praised for having particularly hefty gunplay, and that was a very old first-person shooter called Black. And essentially, every time you fired even the most puny and basic gun in black. It felt like Thor, the god of thunder himself, was coming down to smite your enemies. And that's what a gun should sound like in a game. It should sound impactful. It should sound like... It should feel like you're hitting something. And these are all things that tie in to make a game feel good and feel impactful. Now, what about if you're talking about something that isn't combat? What about platforming, for instance? Well, with platforming, it's all about the responsiveness. And this is where frames per sec. This is where FPS really starts to show its own, because with some, let's look at two comparisons. Let's look between, let's say, Super Meat Boy and the more recently released Cloudberry Kingdom. Now, one complaint that Cloudberry Kingdom got was that even though it was a methodical, incredibly difficult platformer, the controls didn't quite feel responsive. While with Super Meat Boy, the controls feel so sharp. Like, every jump, you jump immediately. Like, it's an immediate jump, and every jump is snappy and quick and instantaneous. And the way you jump, it's not a sort of like gradual build up to the jump. No, it's just a jump quickly and zip around, and you feel like you're able to jump really quickly and really responsively. Running Super Meat Boy at a lower frame rate would practically kill the experience, because everything would have that delay. It would lose that sharpness. It would lose that snappiness that comes inherent with the genre. And so it's certainly a sort of intrinsic link in these games between how fluidly they play and how they feel. And this is why you'll have people harping on. About frame rate. This is one of the reasons why people consider 60 frames to be the standard rather than 30 frames. Is that because when you're running things at this higher frame rate, well, think about it logically. When you're playing at 30 frames per second, in a best case scenario, when you hit a button, your character will start registering that movement at minimum, 1 frame later. And if you're running at 30 frames per second, that's 1/30th of a second later. Well, if you're running at 60 frames per second, that's 1/60th of a second later. And while that sounds like it might not be a big deal, when you get down to it, when you're really in the moment, in the zone, and you feel like you're in this tense, high-energy situation, you can really start to feel the difference between the two. And that's why races feel a lot better at 60 frames per second. It's because you need that kind of impulse. You need that kind of reaction time. You need that fluidity to really make the game shine, to really make it feel good. This is why I had such troubles playing Arkham Origins in 3D. For those of you who don't know, I have a 3D monitor, and I am quite a fan of 3D gaming. So I wanted to try out Arkham Origins in 3D because at first glance, it seems like the perfect candidate for it. It seems like it's a third-person game, so you don't have any first-person problems, and all the menus are mostly unobtrusive and in-game, so that helps. And it's got some nice 3D patches out for it, and the game works stunningly in 3D. But the problem was it dropped the frame rate, and when I was playing it, I just realized that no, I can't do this. The combat doesn't feel right. It feels sluggish. It feels slow. It doesn't have quite the same impact to it. And so, as a general thumb, I'm not a huge. It's not, for me, frame rate isn't as big a problem. Like, I like a higher frame rate, but I'm not the kind of person who will demand 60 frames per second constantly or be unable to play it. Like, I'll happily play a game at 30. But in this case, I couldn't play Batman at 30. It just wasn't working because I was so used to the 60. While Dark Souls, I was playing in 30 from the very beginning, mainly because the PC port isn't very good. But I was playing from 30 at the beginning, and it felt perfectly fluid and natural. It's certainly an interesting sort of parallel when it comes down to it. But I think I should start rounding that up now and end by saying that when it comes down to it, it really is a matter of design. How a game feels, and so a character, when they're moving about, they should feel weighty and impactful, and that's the difference that separates something from, say, Dark Souls, where every swing feels like it's going to be properly hitting an enemy, and say, like Skyrim, where you feel like just sort of waving your sword at something until they fall down. It's sort of the difference between what people have been saying is the difference between Borderlands and Destiny. Like, in Borderlands, they say when you're shooting something, it just feels like you're shooting numbers at them that slowly whittle it down a health bar. Well, in Destiny, you actually feel like you're hitting them with something. The enemies react like they're being physically hit by something. And so, it's a very subtle thing. Nobody really knows how it works, but I hope that I made it just a little bit clearer for you. And with that, I think it is time to end off the show. My last track is quite a long one, and so I will be ending the commentary a little bit early. And so I'll be taking the time now to thank you all for listening to Easy XP. If you like our stuff, then you can catch us here at this time from 12 to 1 right here on SURG FM. If you liked us, please come again and listen to us some more. If you'd like to see some more of our stuff, you can check out our YouTube channel, which is user/SurgEasyXP. Or you could put EasyXP beta into the search bar. You'll find us eventually. I'm still trying to work out how to get our recordings for this season of the show, so there won't be anything new up there for a little bit while I'm still working that out. I apologize. I will be getting the YouTube channel up and running again as soon as I can, even if it means just recording it on my own terms. I'll be getting it online eventually for the people who can't listen live. Alternatively, you can go and follow our new Twitter feed, which will be giving you updates live on when we're going live, and some breaking information as it happens. And so with that, yes, please follow our Twitter. I'm feeling very lonely, so having a couple of people following us would be wonderful. And so with that, I think it's time to leave you with our last track of the day. And now, again, I'm abusing my right as a radio host and not a YouTuber to put up some stuff that I'm not entirely sure I have the copyright for, but my radio license covers. This is a wonderful track from a wonderful remix. Some of you might be familiar with the Zelda Reorchestration Project, a group that recently split up, but until then have been making wonderful reorchestrations of Zelda soundtracks, and their magnum opus, as it were, was the Twilight Symphony, a full orchestral reorchestration of the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess soundtrack. And certainly Twilight Princess is one of my personal favorite Zelda games. It has such a gravitas to it, as it were, and the soundtrack was equally epic to match. And one thing I particularly loved was the companion in that game, and those of you who know the game know that was Midna, who had her own theme. And Twilight Symphony, when they went about making their game, when Twilight Symphony went about to make their rendition of Midna's theme, they thought, let's not just recreate it, let's create a track that shows the journey the character go throughout the entire game. And that's the track I'm going to be playing for you from the Twilight Symphony. Unfortunately, due to some legal complications they had towards the end of development, I don't think you can actually buy the Twilight Symphony. But if you could source it, perhaps, from other sources, I'm not naming names, but I believe they certainly encourage people to go out and find it for themselves, even if you can't purchase it. And so with that, I think it is time to leave you with our track of the week, which is Midna from the Twilight Symphony. Thank you very much once again for listening to Easy XP. My name is Den, your host. Thank you very much for listening, and I leave you with Midna. Enjoy.